Let's take a look at how to build an init patch on the ARP Odyssey. Now, an init patch is like a foundation or starting point on which we can build upon to come up with new sounds. So the init patch I'll be showing you is a gated sawtooth patch, which is very easy to make on the Odyssey. In general, the Odyssey has a very intuitive interface for sound design, but that's a conversation for another day. For now, we just need to know the Odyssey has the following sections. To the left here is the oscillator section that has two oscillators, which are the primary sound sources. Then we have the mixer section here, where we can control the level of the oscillators, among other things, going into the filter. The filter section is where we can control what passes through to the amplifier, from where our sound eventually goes out into the world. Finally, we have the envelope section, where we have two envelopes we can use to control various things on the Odyssey. So now that we know the various sections, we can start building our init patch. So let's begin. We first move all the sliders down, including the portamento slider. Now all our sliders are all the way down. We now move the switches to the up position. So now all our sliders are all the way down and all our switches are in the up position. At this point, I prefer to transpose the keyboard to be in the middle octave. Next, we move the oscillator 1 frequency slider to the middle. We will obviously need to tune it at some point, but for now, we'll leave it at the middle so that we have something audible we can work with. Next, in the mixer section, we send the oscillator 1 into the filter. We do that by moving the VCO1 slider up. We won't hear anything at this point because the filter is shut. So the next thing we need to do is open up the filter, and we can do that by moving this VCF frequency slider up. We still won't be able to hear anything yet, and that's because the VCA is closed. But before we get to fixing that, we are already at a very useful place on the Odyssey, because we can now move this VCA gain slider up, which, as you can hear, will give us this always on droning sound. This drones at the pitch of the last key we pressed. So if we press the C key, it will drone at C, and if we press the F key, it will drone at F. Now the reason this is useful is because we can now use this to free up our hands and tune the oscillators. To illustrate this, we first move the VCA gain slider up. We press the C key and then use a tuner, for example something like this, plugged in either to the headphone out jack or the patch bay or our mixer, and then we tune the oscillator to C. This is pretty cool, but more often than not, we don't want this always on droning sound. Instead, what we want is for the keyboard to trigger an envelope to control the VCA. The way to do that on the Odyssey is simply to move this slider below the VCA gain slider all the way up. Now this affects the level to which the AR envelope here controls the VCA, and you can think of this as the master volume of the Odyssey. At this point, we should have our init patch and be able to hear something when we play the keyboard. And with that, we are done building our init patch. The reason this is called a gated sawtooth patch is because the AR envelope is like a gate. There's no attack, there's no release, and maximum sustain. It basically goes from on to off. So when we press a key, it immediately reaches its maximum volume since there's zero attack. It stays at that volume when we hold on the key since the sustain is at maximum, and then immediately goes back to zero volume when we let go since there is no release. Also, when the switch is in the up position, which we set up at the beginning, it's the sawtooth wave from the oscillator that goes into the filter. and hence it's called a gated sawtooth patch. So now we have a basic init patch. We can build on this and create new sounds. Given the flexibility of the Odyssey, we have limitless possibilities for sound design starting from this very basic patch. As an example, say we want to create a bass patch where the filter is opened by the ADSR envelope with a pretty high resonance to get, like a squelchy duck-like bass sound. To do this, we first transport the keyboard to the lowest octave because it's a bass patch. We then close the filter down a little. So I'm going to move it halfway and then move the resonance up just short of being at the maximum. Then we create an envelope that has a little attack, some decay and some sustain. We then modulate the filter using this ADSR envelope by moving this slider up, and now we should be close to the sound that we want. And then we can adjust it to taste. Alright, I hope that was helpful.